Gentlemen, I'd like to call the committee meeting of the whole to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Yelker is absent. Trustee Panito.
Here.
Trustee Berg. Here. Trustee Brady.
Here.
Trustee Glotz.
Present.
And Trustee Curran.
Here.
President Vandenberg is also absent.
Nope.
Oh, okay. Present.
Oh, you can't do it.
You want
No, by all means.
Do I have a motion to consider approval of the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on November 6, 2018?
So moved. Second?
I'll
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
I'd like to, somebody wants to discuss the Class A liquor license for Hot and Juicy Crab located at 7216 191st Street.
Yeah, Rob Zimmer's going to handle it.
Members of the board, Clerk Therian, good evening. A few weeks ago, the owner of Hot and Juicy Crab, GE, or Michael Q, is here in the audience tonight, approached the mayor's office about inquiring to purchase, or acquire a liquor license for Hot and Juicy Crab. The establishment is going to be located at 7216 191st Street. At the time that the owner approached the mayor's office, he informed the mayor's office that he had previously purchased the location. At that time, I inquired to see if he had been in contact with anybody at all in the mayor's office, and he said he had not. I then informed him that it's unusual for an owner to purchase a location before approaching the mayor's office to see the availability of a liquor license. Unfortunately, we are currently at capacity for all Class A licenses, so in order for this to be approved, it needs to be approved by the committee first and then the village board at large on December 4th. The location is looking to offer a full-service seafood restaurant along with a full-service bar. They have not mentioned any interest in video gaming at this time. Anybody have any questions?
I have a couple. So, do you have any of these restaurants in other places? I guess it's for the petitioner, not for you, Rob. Thanks.
Yes, I do. I currently still own one at the restaurant in Bourbonnais, Kansai Japanese Steakhouse.
What type of food is that? Like what kind of?
It's Japanese steakhouse restaurant, like hibachi grill style.
Okay. Because the name of it, it sounded more like it was a seafood type of a restaurant.
Oh yeah, currently I'm gonna operate one in this location. Yes, it's gonna be a seafood and burgers place. That's my other family on the restaurant in Yolanda area. That's the same concept I bring here.
Okay. So you have a place in Bourbonnais that's a steakhouse, and you want to do a seafood restaurant here in Tinley Park.
Right. Yes.
Okay. What kind of like expensive, inexpensive? I mean, what type of price range?
It depends. We do offers like by pounds for the seafood, so by pounds we could do the pound, and then burgers like start like $8.99 to $10.99 for burgers, and soup, salads as well. Appetizer like from $4 to $10.
Would it be a full-service restaurant?
It is full-service restaurant. Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many tables you're planning on having?
We have 48 tables over there.
And do you know what times you'd be open, like when to when?
We open from 12 to 10 o'clock on weekday. On the weekend, Friday and Saturday, we plan to open till 10:30.
Now, the location that you're taking over, was that a restaurant before? Or?
Yeah, that was a former Boston Pizza restaurant with the full-service bar as well.
So it had a liquor license?
Yes, it did.
It has the license, but they closed for about like a year and a half.
Okay.
Any significant remodeling that you've done inside?
Yeah, we do some of the like veneer works, like on the flooring and the wall, new walls, painting stuff. We don't do like major taking the walk down. We don't do anything, just like remodeling works.
So there is still the separate bar area?
Yeah, the bar area still will be separate from the restaurant.
In your business plan, did you count on liquor sales as part of it? I mean, can you make it without liquor?
we can't make it without a liquor license. It's really only the reason we're interested to put in the restaurant because this concept of restaurant, we really need a liquor license to work with.
And you thought when you bought the business, you were buying the license, or?
No, because when I contact the seller, so he mentioned that it was a existing bar already, so I shouldn't have any problem though. So that's why I didn't check that before we make a commitment to purchase the building.
Does anybody else have any further questions?
Just for the record, the gaming aspect of this, you're not talking about any video gaming, and that
Not at
if
this
that were
time.
ever to be a consideration, you'd have to come before this board again. You're aware of that, correct?
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, I think our license now precludes it, right?
Right, I'm just making it for the
Yeah.
public record, is that the establishment as presented is not requesting video gaming, nor is it a part of his business plan he submitted.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do we want,
I think you asked all the questions we were going to ask. I was just concerned as to why you wouldn't have asked for the liquor license prior to buying the building, but he explained that.
Right.
And I kind of came in late, and I do apologize for that. Did Rob explain the response that the mayor's office sent to the applicant as well as the real estate agency? Did you explain any of that, Rob? Okay. Right, I mean, I don't want to overstep that.
Yeah, I explained that when I talked to the business owner about it, I explained that this was an atypical process for him to purchase the location before inquiring about a liquor license.
I just want to say thanks for choosing Tinley.
I think we should optimize his business by supporting him right now. I'd rather see that than a vacant building.
I don't have any problem with a full-service restaurant serving drinks with the food. I just, wanted to make sure that it's a legitimate, functioning business, and we've got, I guess you're asking for us to put this on the next meeting agenda for approval? So we'll still have 2 weeks to do our due diligence on the restaurant and how they're doing in Bourbonnais. Bourbonnais, did you say Orlando? Other family has one in Orlando?
No, in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta. Atlanta. Okay. Is that a seafood place too?
Yeah, it's actually seafood place. We have 9 locations over there.
9 locations. Is it doing well?
Oh, we don't cook it.
I think we'd like that. I think we'd like that in our village. I don't have any further questions. Anybody? Do we have a motion to move it up to the full board?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discuss job order contract for new pole emergency alert system at 175th Street and 88th Avenue.
Yes, good evening, everybody. This request is for replacing the tornado siren at 175th, approximately 88th Avenue. The existing siren's over 40 years old, and this is in phase with our replacement of other sirens within the town. We have put this out for job order contracting, our previous procurement process, and received the quote back for replacement installation. And this includes a new electrical service as required by ComEd for the project amount of $55,749 and some change. Looking for your approval on this request.
Does anybody have any questions on this?
Why is it taking 44 years to replace this?
As we've been working on them, they've been prioritized based on needs of repairs. They were built to last previously, so we started looking over which ones were requiring repairs, and based on those needs, we've gotten to the point where repairs are no longer available and replacement's the next available requirement.
And this was budgeted already? It's
Yes, sir.
From last year's budget?
Yes, sir.
Who drew up the contract, Dave?
Sir?
Who drew up the contract for this?
I'm sorry, I can answer that. This is our template contract for service contracts. This was put in front of our attorney's office as with every other contract.
I was just curious, because at the end, I've never at least seen it before, maybe it was on there before. We have on there, the signature of the clerk and the mayor are required if the contract's over 20,000. Is that new, or Is that
No,
from the
that's-
BKD thing, or has it always been on
No,
there?
it's always been $20,000 required.
No, I know, but has it always been in there?
To my understanding, it has been.
I think it's part of our,
I know what it is. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
for my recollection, it's always been on these contracts.
Yes.
I think this is your committee. Do you have a motion on this? Or do I have a motion to approve or send this to the regular meeting?
I'll make a motion to send it to December 4th meeting.
Yes, please.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I thought this was yours. Discuss job order contract for police station perimeter security fence project. Is that you as well?
Yes, sir. Thank you again. This is for installation of a 6-foot perimeter security fence around the backyard lot of the police station on 183rd Street. Currently, we do not have any security fencing around the facility. The police department has shown purpose to have this installed. Our team went and checked out a couple other police stations that how they had those installed, and the recommendation was to have a security gate with our fob access, proximity access that'll be installed with this project. So as you see, it is a $112,000 project. It's not only installing fencing around the whole perimeter of the facility, but it's also installing electronic gate openers and proximity readers for that gate.
Were there cameras as well in there? I thought?
There is currently cameras around the facility. In conversations with the police department, they have had in the past where we had random people walking in the area, and there was some concerns of security with being the area where it's the employees enter and exit, and having the equipment being stored back there with no security fencing around the perimeter.
I kind of remember this coming up at last year's budget meetings.
Yes, sir.
They were concerned about people being able to get in through other doors or get out through other doors, and this is what you came to. Does this seem like it'll fit that need?
Yes, sir. And again, we went to a couple other departments with police and our facilities department and verified, what was the best purpose for the needs there. And this seems to be a common installation for other departments also.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, and it's going to be wrought iron or something? I mean, it's not just...
Yeah, what type of-
It'll be a wrought iron appearance, obviously. That's normally an aluminum with powder coating on it, but it's that style. It's not like a chain link or a wooden privacy fence.
John, how many years
I didn't mean to
the-
cut you off.
How many years did the police department request this item?
So my understanding, it's been discussed about for a couple of years. Last year it was approved in the budget, but that was just a portion. This past budget, the remaining dollar amount that was requested was approved, so we've had the full amount so we can get the electronic gates and this perimeter fencing. It was obvious to us that just doing it as a single installation versus remobilizing for the perimeter fencing and then coming back for the electronic gates, it's saving us money by doing it as one installation.
Safe to assume it's been more than 3 years?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's been in a few budgets.
John, how will it affect the parking over there, the parking spaces for the SALT meetings? That's going to be, none of the people park on the side, do they?
To my understanding, no, that most of that is labeled for employee parking. The face of the fencing is going to be at the face of the facility, so any of the parking to the south of the facility will still be made available. And then if anybody is parking or utilizing the training tower lot, they can still walk across at the sidewalk access to the front of the facility if they're parking over there. But if anybody is parking, I guess would be north of the face of the building, they're essentially in non-public parking that they're utilizing.
Will police vehicles be parked inside the fencing?
Yes, sir. And that's the point of this installation, and it allows for the proximity reader. So they'll pull up, you'll have it almost like a toll booth. You have a proximity reader that can fob in, the gate opens, and then it'll close behind them, and they'll be able to park inside where they normally do inside there.
You may be able to take evidence cars and that type of thing in there too, right? I mean...
We have a separate location for the evidence
Do you?
vehicles, but,
Okay.
For temporary usage, they could put them out back there. I would assume they would have.
And I'm
defer to the
assuming,
police
Chief,
department for that.
you're okay with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Have we had problems, John, that we're doing this, or are we just doing it just for security?
I would have to defer to the police department for, what issues they've had with that.
think I remember them saying people were walking around back there before the last time this came up. I think I remember the previous chief saying that people were like walking around back there and they...
Yeah, and police departments, I mean, a lot of times they've been under attack lately. We're just trying to sort of kind of shore up our area there. Also, they're going to have the fence where after someone's processed and released, that they have to go out a certain way, out the west door and back towards the parking lot to the south.
Could you answer that first? Thanks.
There's a couple other reasons why we requested this. Ever since that building's been there, we found somebody out who's been in custody for something. They tend to wander around the back until their ride gets there. If it's a serious offense or something like that, they can potentially find one of our clerks or something, going to their car out back, so it's a security thing for our employees. The other thing is, once we moved the local court over to the police department, our administrative court, now a lot of people will park back there in the employee parking. We have the same thing. A lot of people wander through the employee areas, so trying to keep some of those folks out of that area, of course.
Has there ever been any damage to our fleets? No? Okay. Stupid, but you never know.
We have found people walking around back there, kind of looking at their cars and things. Administrative court type stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
John, you said you looked at a couple other communities. What were those communities?
Which communities were they?
Yeah.
I think, Darren, were you on that trip? Which communities?
What communities
did they
you looked
refer
at
to?
that have
Just
these?
check out other police stations.
I believe Frankfurt was one of them. The other ones I don't know.
I think,
Oak Park, Frankfurt, Oak Park.
Yeah, Orland Park does.
And is there just one main gate in and
So
out?
there would be a gate on either the east and the west side of the facility where the driveways are currently.
And it'll only be police officers or people working
Village
there
employees.
that will be allowed to go in here, right?
Other questions?
And I take it you're looking for us to recommend this to go to the full board?
Yes, sir.
Is there such a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Receive mid-year budget, strategic plan update, and goal setting. I'm sorry. What's that? Is there more?
Item 6.
Discuss replacement of building at post for engineering and bid specifications.
Okay. This is for our Post 7 lift stations, sanitary lift stations located at 8399 Brookside Glen Drive. The outer shell of this station is deteriorated with fiberglass. We're going to be replacing it with a drop-in building like we did at our other lift stations, Imagine. We're also going to be upgrading the control panels and like I said, replacing the building. So this is a contract to do the engineering and bid specs to get this designed and put out to bid. So this would be with Christopher Burke Engineering for a $41,000 contract. We're requesting this to be moved up to the next village board meeting for approval.
Any questions?
So Kevin, that's not the whole job, right?
No, that's just for design and.
So they have to go out there and look, it's like a hole, and they have to go down there?
No, there's actually, we have a house that goes
lifting?
around the generator and the controls for the pumps. The outside shell is deteriorated, it's fiberglass. It's right by the bridge area by Brookside Glen, 2 homes. So we need to get it weather protected. So we need to redesign that shell. We're going to put like a brick building around it instead to match the neighborhood, and then upgrade the controls. So it's just for the maintenance of getting to work.
What could the final cost end up being?
Depends. It could be a couple $100,000, maybe $150,000. Depends on how much we have to replace. We're not replacing the wet wells. We're only replacing the up.
And you're keeping the generator, I think I read?
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Kev.
Okay.
Kevin, this was one of the items that was budgeted for this year, and
Yes.
one of the numerous infrastructure things that need attention. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to move this to the regular board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 7, Receive mid-year budget strategic plan update and goal setting for 2019-2020.
Thank you, Trustee Panito. So tonight we have a fairly detailed presentation. Multiple purposes tonight. The major purpose, though, is really to talk about what we see as our big picture budget priorities. Yes, it's already that time to start discussing the budget, which is May 1st year, and to kind of get your input as to whether we're missing some of the priorities, and to ask you to rank some of those. But I think what we're going to do is ask you maybe after tonight to kind of take some of this home and get back to us early next week. But part of this meeting is also to talk about where we're at with the budget this year. We're also going to do, Brad is going to update us. Obviously, a large part of our budget is our TIFs and pensions, which always gets a lot of public questions, so we thought we'd use this opportunity to talk about that. And then I'm going to hit a little bit on the priorities from the strategic plan and where we're at with them. We're going to talk about, we've changed the budget this year, as you're aware of, and we've actually already started work on the capital improvement plan, so we're kind of going to give you initial report on that. And then we'll review the priorities that we're recommending for next year, and also follow up with some mid-year budget requests. So that's that. So if the mayor or Trustee Kern had any opening remarks, as the mayor and Trustee Kern as the finance chair, anything you wanted to add, or?
I'll just,
okay.
I mean, if you have nothing, I'll just approach this whole by saying to the staff, thank you again for your collaborative effort and long hours spent on creating all this really interesting documentation for us to review. For the public, this is the nuts and bolts of how village government works and how we provide services and to our residents. And I just want to say to the board, appreciate your input, your review, your diligence. Looking forward to solidifying some of the goals that we had put forth as a board several months ago, initiatives and major capital goals that we feel is being important for the community. So I think this is a great first step. I'd also just like to commend the board. I understand this is a little bit different process this year, and from what I'm understanding, it's gone quite well. So thank you very much for indulging us on that, and we'll turn it over to the professionals.
Thank you, Mayor Vandenberg. And I think we took to heart. I know the schedule towards the end last year was a little compacted, and we'll talk about that later. I think we can make it a little bit easier for everybody when we actually review the budget, which will be in late February and March. So first part of this is our Assistant Treasurer, Michael Zonzius, is going to go through the first few of many spreadsheets. So get your magnifying glasses out, and we'll hit the highlights.
Good evening. The first, I'm really discussing two of the major funds here. 01 fund, which is the operating fund, and Fund 60, which is the water and sewer fund. Presented above, in front of you, is the 01 fund by category. And this is just a 40-foot view of the budget. It's not detailed, but and it's meant to be a 40,000 foot. We didn't want to get into the nuts and bolts and make it too detailed and less exciting for that matter. This is by category. The first two columns are the last year's budget and actual, and then the next three columns is this year. It's the budget for this year, then the actual year-to-date, which covers up through October, which is 6 months. And then the final column is the expected or estimated projected where we will be at April 30th of 2019. By and large, this is done by categories. The first part is the revenue, second part is expenses. The revenues are coming in a favorable budget. There really is no big item that's different within the category or something that's abnormal. What is favorable are the income taxes from Illinois that are somewhat favorable by about $500,000. We expect overall, though, the total revenues will be coming on budget if not favorable. Where there is improvement or favorable is in the expenses. If you look at the salaries and the benefits there, it's favorable by approximately $2.5 million. A lot of that is because we have not had the personnel. We haven't filled every position, and also because that transcends into the FICA, the health insurance. 66% of our budget is personnel and benefits, and that's no different than any other service organization. Well, when you start to decrease the number of positions and the personnel, that just brings down the health insurance, the FICA, the unemployment insurance, all those personnel-related expenses. Also, what was favorable was in the contracts, contract services. Ambulance services came down, electricity is down. We also have some printing fees are down, so those are coming in favorable. As for commodities, those are pretty much coming in on budget, and for those other items, if we haven't spent them to date, they will be spent by April 30th, and that would be like the transfers and the economic incentives that we offer. So that is how the budget looks by category. But I think that it's always important that we look at the budget other ways. And on the next slide, if you would change, Dave.
Yeah, and if there's any specific questions on these pages, just, we can stop and talk at each page, so just jump in.
Now this slide, same expenses. You can see where all the amounts are the same at the bottom, but we look at it by division. And when you look at the division, you'll see that our largest division, the police department, is coming out favorable by about $600,000. Again, that is related to the personnel. So it's just this budget is coming in on favorable, if not favorable budget for April 30th.
Are you going to the next page?
Yeah, you have
Can I go? Yeah,
Yep,
can you
go
back?
ahead. Yeah.
Donna, for line 35, could you explain to everyone why there's a difference from last year to this year?
Last year, we combined some of the street commission budget into which basically housed most of the special events into the Carbon 35 budget. So that's why you saw that giant increase. That also does not reflect the revenues that we bring in from those special events.
Thank you. No, I know, I've got a lot of questions on it. I just wanted you to, that there's a reason for it. Thanks.
Good question.
Dave, could you go to the previous page also? The previous one to that, the first one. What's also important here is to note that the difference between the revenue and expenses, because when you're looking at that, you'll see that our cash flow will increase by approximately $5 million. And that $5 million then will go into the capital funds for our capital funding needs. So it's just important to see that, the bigger that number gets, the more we will have for capital. And that'll become important in the following slide, and the next one, because this now is our water and sewer fund.
Right. That it goes into capital, but it's capital for the next year. Is that correct?
And as you can see, when you look at the sewer and the water, that difference is negligible for the next year for the revenues less expenses. So that's where our capital needs are difficult, are the most difficult is in the water and sewer fund. When you look at the water and sewer fund, it is coming in on budget, as you can see, for both revenues and expenses. Unfortunately, we only have $500,000 that we are looking for capital expenditures in the next year. And speaking of capital expenditures, As you may have all been provided, this is the capital improvement program that we have prepared over the past 2 months. It was prepared in 3 dimensions. The first dimension is by department. We looked at every department was contacted. We filled in what they needed. It was done on SharePoint by category, how much they needed, when they needed it. The second dimension that I provided that is by priority. And if you looked at the first sheet of David's, we don't have that slide. It's in the book. We have a definition of all the priorities that go from A all the way through F. A, of course, you have to do it because there's a law out there that needs to do it. B, that we have to do it, otherwise this structure will fail within the next year. C, if it will fail within 1 and 3 years. So we went around and then we categorized each one of our projects. We also had to exclude some of those projects because at the end of the day, it was just getting there were just too many projects. And those projects that were eliminated or deferred, we gave an X. We did not eliminate them from the budget per se, but I provided a sheet at the end of that section that showed all the projects that were deferred until another year, so that it was full disclosure as to what each department was requesting. The third portion of this budget was by category. We separated it by infrastructure, facilities, debt service. And that was one thing that we did not have in previous budgets, was the debt service. I like to see the entire population of projects. And I think within this document, you'll have the entire population of documents. There will be added some additional projects as we go through will be added to this. This is just draft 1, and hopefully some will be reduced. The reason is because if you look at the total budget, it's $56.6 million, I believe the number was. But for each one of those dollars, we have a source of revenue for those. We just did not put them in without looking at how we're going to pay for them. And we have the different sources. For some of those sources, we had to use debt service. It's not we have to, but it's just an option that we can use. So we have debt service for like the plaza, $8 million. But in addition to the plaza, and this is one of the items that will have to be added, are enabling projects, or projects that we have to do to the infrastructure before the plaza is completed. So we had $8 million for the plaza, plus $2.8 million for the remaining portion of the fire department. I put a reserve in there of $10 million, but that was 3 weeks ago before I had all the projects. And now that we have all the projects, I can whittle that reserve down. Also, we have the operating, and that's the most important part, I think. That $5 million that I showed as the cash flow for this next year, that will go in here. Unfortunately, I had $7 million projected, so I'm still going to have to cut down on $2 million in projects. We have TIF funds, $4 million of TIF funds that we can also be used in these capital projects. My point, though, with the water was we don't have a lot of excess cash in there, so we would have to go out for some bonds, may have to go out for bonds for those improvements. So it's just not a capital plan. It's not expenditures. I provided you that because I wasn't ready for the revenues, but we do have options for those expenditures. Next page.
Yeah, do you have that? I mean, we don't have it in our packet.
That is correct.
Yeah, we have it.
Yeah.
You
Not
have-
the A through F categories.
Yeah,
there.
Oh,
It's
that
very
part.
nice, Michael. It's the
That's
best
what prior-
explanation of the budget I've ever had is that pamphlet. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So this is, yeah, I would,
I'm following along in here, apparently.
obviously, this is, you know, the requests And once we have our budget meetings in February is when, we'll have to make some of the tough decisions. But if I would encourage you to spend time on anything, this is really important because the capital is where we make the big decisions, and this is a year, as we've talked about, where we've had a lot of projects that have been quote-unquote on the books for a while. Fire station, the mental health center, the South Street infrastructure, and they're now all coming to a head. And the reality is, with our current revenue situation, we can't do all these. And so this is where a lot of the choices we're going to have to make come February. So we'll have options for you, obviously, when it comes to that time. But that's why it's, one, I think, important we all get familiar with this, and later on when we talk about priorities, that we really, I think, have the trustees spend some time kind of giving some honest assessment of some tough choices on priorities. So, but yeah, and these are the top 10.
Right.
So, yeah.
And to your point before, Mayor, was, when you asked this about the perimeter fencing, when it was, well, by using this book, you'll be able to see how these projects will walk across from the 5 years out into the current year. Also, it's important that we give each of the projects a number, and that number is going to mean something, like you see on some of, when you look at the book, you'll see CIP 19 or 20. That means it was funded, or it was intended to be funded in 19. Now, 5 years ago, for 5 years from now, and when we look at this book, and if we see a number, a CIP number with 19, well, we know right away that that was supposed to happen 5 years ago, or it was in the program. So it's a good tool, I hope. And anyway, this slide up here is the top projects, top 10 projects. As I alluded to, you have the plaza for $8 million. We are going to have some enabling projects that will have to be done before that is completed. Those are not in this budget, but they will be in the next draft. The other ones are the fire department for $5.8 million. That would be partially funded by bonds, possibly, and by the cash flow. A lot of the projects, when I say $56 million, approximately $10 million of those projects were in the CIP for this year, so that money will carry over into the next year. So that $56 million does look like a big number, but we have a way to get that funded if it's so desired.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
All right. We're going to come back to capital a little bit later, but now we're going to, Brad has been itching to jump in. We don't want to deny him his time. Talk about TIFs first, which
Thank you. Just going to go over a quick summary on our existing TIFs. Oak Park Avenue TIF, of course, was established in 1994, as you are aware. We just recently did the ordinance to close out the fund at the end of 2018. The big point that we've talked about before is that, again, this was a very successful TIF. As of its last tax year, 94% of the tax base within the TIF was new growth increment compared to what was there originally, which represents about 6% of the current value. As I noted earlier, that is going to add about $31 million to our tax base as part of the 2018 tax year. Some of the projects that have occurred within that TIF are the construction of the Holiday Inn, the taxable projects, the Cornerstone Center at the northeast corner of 183rd and Harlem, what I refer to as the Always Open Shopping Center at the northwest corner of 183rd and Oak Park, the Tinley Point mixed-use development right across from Convention Center Drive, the Park Avenue Townhomes at 179th Street west of Oak Park, Millennium Lake Townhomes at the corner of Oak Park Avenue and 183rd Street, the Lakeview Townhomes at 178th Street in Oak Park, LA Fitness, the Garofalo Shopping Center at the foot of Convention Center Drive, the Union Square townhomes that are currently under development at 179th and Oak Park. The two biggest non-taxable projects within that TIF were of course the Convention Center and the expansion of the Convention Center and Central Middle School. The Main Street North TIF was established in 2001. It has not had a large number of projects in the TIF. The revenues you can see here on this chart have varied over time, in part due to the recession, the impacts of the recession, and have now in the last couple of tax years have now recovered, and we still have some life in this TIF yet for the possibility to accomplish some projects. About 46% of its current tax base is new development, new growth. Again, a list of some of the projects: Amazing Smiles Dental Office, Liberty Supply, which was the former Tinley Glass, the Wheatfield, the former Jewel Walgreens site, and the liquor store that just recently opened in the old Jewel part of the building, the old Tinley Park Arms condominiums mixed-use development on the east side of, on the west side of Oak Park Avenue, sometimes referred to as the Pass Building, and Springford Hall right south of Midlothian Creek. The Fulton House enhancement at the north end of the TIF, Hope Montessori School, their expansion and remodeling, the Elmore Plaza Tinley Square parking lot west of the shopping center. Non-taxable projects include the reconstruction of 171st Street and Oak Park Avenue, the construction of the new Fulton Elementary School, and a Midlothian Creek pedestrian bridge. The Main Street South TIF, also established in 2001. We terminated that TIF earlier this year. Some of the projects that occurred in that TIF was the expansion of Bettenhausen Motor Sales, Lakeview Townhomes, which I mentioned earlier in the Oak Park Avenue TIF. It crosses into two different TIFs. The Citibank facade and landscape improvements, the Oak Park Avenue Center, the former P&R Autos, Bailey's Restaurant and Bar. Some of the non-taxable projects include the Oak Park Avenue train station, Zabraki Plaza, and the Carl Vogt Building Plaza. The Mental Health Center TIF, again established in 2014, had growth almost, its tax base, its base year was established in 2015, and right out of the box we had the redevelopment of the northeast corner of 179th Street and Harlem with the Porter Place project. That immediately created some increment for this TIF. The property did get revalued with the assessor's office, so we see a small decrease in the incremental revenue between 2016 and 2017. There we see, even in its short duration, we see 14% of growth in the increment in the tax base. The new development, of course, Porter Place, Anthem Memory Care. We still have, the state campus before, 280 acres. There are other sites along Harlem Avenue, along 179th Street and Sayre Avenue, as well as the west side of Oak Park Avenue, and sites on Devan Drive. The Legacy TIF, established in 2015, the largest property in this TIF is, of course, the Panduit former headquarters and manufacturing facility. The company has just recently demolished the structures on the site. And again, timing-wise, I think our timing was good. Our base year was 2015, and we've seen growth in our EAV, or in our tax base and our incremental revenues between 2016 and 2017. Increment at this point is 19% of the tax base. The new Bremen TIF we established earlier this year to replace the Main Street South TIF. Some of the projects that have occurred or that are pending to occur are the Boulevard at Central Station, the North Street former Central Middle School property, the Holiday proposed mixed-use development, Blackstone Lofts, now Bremen Station, the former Bremen Cash Store site, east of Citibank, and of course we mentioned the Central Middle School site, which is part of the Holiday project, and we have Banging Gavel Brewery that is looking to renovate the historic Carl Volk building. Infrastructure projects include the Harmony Square Entertainment Plaza that will be located on North Street, construction of the Freedom Pond, which addresses stormwater storage requirements under the new Metropolitan Water Reclamation District watershed maintenance ordinance requirements. Without having built that pond, most of our downtown sites would not be developable as they are currently planned, as we would be required to put more on-site storage as part of the land requirements.
So any questions on the TIFs in general, specific? Okay.
We get a lot of questions about our pension funds, and our police pension fund is nearly 76% funded as of the most current actuarial calculation.
Right.
The funding percent, I'm sorry?
What's the state average for that?
The aggregate of all the police pension funds in the state is 58%. So we're far above the aggregate value, the aggregate percentage funding. And I would like to point out that a lot of people gravitate on this funding percentage. It's a moving target. It's a snapshot in time, and every time you add a person to the department, every time somebody retires, every time a beneficiary passes away and is replaced with a surviving spouse, the number, it's constantly a moving target. It constantly change, and even if we were at 100% funding, it does not eliminate our requirement to continue to put money into the pension fund. So it's kind of a guide, and at 76%, the pension fund will never run out of money. As long as we continue to contribute as we have been doing, the pension fund will never run out of money to pay for the benefits that it needs to provide. The employer contribution currently for the police pension fund is just shy of $3 million annually, and the village has continued to contribute 100% or more of the annual funding requirement for the police pension since 1984. Here's kind of a graph of the funding percentages over time. You can see at one point we did, at one snapshot in time, we did actually hit 100% funding, and that again, there's a number of factors that play into that. The investment returns and so forth play heavily. The economy plays heavily, obviously, with the investment returns. And that largely accounts for the big dip that you see during the recessionary era of around 2009. And we've recovered from that, and we're progressing in an upward direction again.
Hey, Brad, do you know what any of the surrounding municipalities are funded at?
I don't have those off the top of my head, but I can get some information on that. Dave, I believe this is you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So now we're going to get into a discussion of our strategic plan and goals. So, as a reminder, the strategic plan was initially developed by the board. It was almost 3 years ago. For those of you who were on the board at the time, we had a couple snowy nights in January where we had an outside facilitator come in, and these goals that were set were goals that were established by the board. I think if you look through, I'm only going to hit the highlights on it, but if you look through the detail, there's really been a lot of progress made. There's been some that have become non-operative. So we did update the plan a little bit. There was a few, for example, some of you may remember one of the goals was to extend utilities to the unincorporated area on the east side with some grant money. That grant money was never, we could never develop a partnership with the residents, so that is really not an operative goal. But we combined some ones that were similar. And the other thing, though, I think that I really wanted to point out in terms of your main document here, one of the things we've added this year is very specific performance measurements. So it's great, you know, we've got goals in terms of who's responsible for what the funding sources are, but we've added in here, and this is a lot of help with the department heads and Hannah, some very specific measurements about how we know when we're accomplishing these goals. So, and this is something, again, typically a community does refreshes every 4 or 5 years, so I would think in the next couple of years we may want to do a complete refresh. But I'm just going to hit some of the highlights tonight before we get into the goals for next year. And again, a lot of these we've already talked about either in previous meetings or in the capital plan. The mental health center is obviously one of the, probably our biggest development project, and as we all know, we're waiting on purchase price from the state. We're reviewing proposals, and we started a financial review of those proposals. The downtown plaza is probably our biggest infrastructure project, and as Michael was discussing earlier, we're working on the design, groundbreaking in the spring, and finalizing the budget both for the plaza as well as the related infrastructure. Branding, and we'd be happy to kind of give a very detailed overview, but as you know, this has been a lot of our efforts, and from the Roger Brooks study, we've really made significant progress on the first 22 action items. So a lot of work that marketing and many of the other departments have put into moving this forward. Keeping the convention center vital was one of the big goals 2.5 years ago, and we really think we made great steps with that agreement with the Harp Group, and hopefully bringing in a new hotel with closing expected on that project any day now.
Dave, before you proceed, what is
Sure.
the percentage, what are we thinking the percentages that we're going to start the groundbreaking on the plaza in March?
The percentages?
Yeah, what is the percentage of us doing that in time? Is it 50%, 60%? Are we 100% guaranteed to start March 9, 2019?
I'm going to ask the project team. Yeah.
Well, with
Yeah.
the first phase of that will be the North Street improvements, and we're pretty much on target for
Yeah.
March.
Okay.
That.
Yeah. Okay.
The rest of it will follow.
Thank you.
Downtown beautification maintenance was a big topic of discussion a few years ago. I think there's been a lot of progress, certainly more to be made. Obviously getting a new fountain, new traffic lights and curbs painted, updated roadway markings, upgraded landscape, and repaving the Metro South lots. Improving our facade improvement and incentive program was a major priority of the board, major priority of the mayor, and so this was, playbook was instituted, and we have had really a lot of interest. Nine grants have actually been applied for, and so I think we'll start to see money being spent on that during the next year. The sidewalk capital improvement program, the board did start to allocate money for that in this year's budget. Harlem Avenue, a number of other areas have been completed for this year, and there's been additional sites that have been identified, and I believe we have some in this new capital plan, correct? Yes. One of the goals of the plan was actually to kind of monitor the number of goals, and I think this is a real good indication. A lot of these goals are long-term goals, so there's 9 completed, but there's 47 that really are in progress or ongoing. And some of these will go probably well past the time of the plan, but again, I think it shows we've made some really good progress here. One of our long-term projects, again, has been working with Will County on the widening and bridge at 80th Avenue and I-80. Kevin, myself, and our engineers recently met with the county's consultant. And again, this is, some of these goals, a lot of them are dependent on others. But they did tell us at that point, they're actually looking at the bridge first in 2021 and the widening 2022 with the infamous pending funding words given to us at that meeting. So we've been working with them in terms of obviously giving our desired improvements, including the Tinley music sign that we want on there. So at this point, we're obviously working actively with them and hope that those projects will be funded. A relatively small capital project, but I think an important project in terms of community safety was the Tinley Park High School walking path, which was completed this year. There was a very kind of general goal about safety and strong, desirable community. And I think the board's intention was really to focus on some of the public safety areas. And of course, in this last year, we've been really focusing a lot of our dollars on a couple areas. One is camera installations, which we've done 2 already. There'll be additionals in the budget next year, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then, of course, the increase in public safety staffing with the positions we've added. And again, we'll be talking and be asking for your feedback on how much more of the study the goal is to implement for next year. Again, getting down to the smaller projects a little bit, but just to keep this on the radio, radar. I was thinking police radio probably. Was the former state police station that has been renovated. Pat Carr led that project. Be glad to give a tour to anybody who's over there. But we do have new offices complete and personnel that have moved into new spaces. So that's it on the strategic plan. If there's anything else on here that you want me to talk about, I'd be glad to. Obviously, going through this could take an hour in itself, but I wanted to just
that last point that you brought up,
yes,
as small as it was compared to the rest. And then there was another end of that. We talked about some critical infrastructure that was in the basement of that building. Is that a part of the continued plans moving forward? Because I mean, that was the reason why we were considering moving forward with the state police, right? Without the state police.
Yeah, actually, that's part of the program that we have, and this year's budget is part of the engineering. John Urbano has been leading that up, and that's moving the equipment from downstairs, radio equipment, servers upstairs into a clean environment, clean room environment up there. So,
thank you.
Dave, is this document available to the public? I mean,
yeah, we update this every quarter in terms of the status, and it's online. So, yeah, I think if we don't have this most updated one online, we'll get it online this week. But yeah, we update this every quarter.
I just want to say you've made a lot of progress towards some pretty complicated goals, and some of the ones that haven't happened look like they're on track to happen.
It's, you know, it's the strategic plan, and I think they really, I think, helped focus where the board wanted us to spend our priorities, and so really all the staff deserves the credit, and the board deserves the credit because some of these needed funding, and you know, in the past they all hadn't been funded. So I agree. I'm very happy with progress, but I think there's obviously still a lot to be done, but I think we're making good progress.
I do have another question on Harlem Avenue. That isn't us, but that's a project that's coming soon.
Yeah, about the resurfacing. Yeah, that's the one. Kevin, you want to talk about that?
So I just actually got in contact with IDOT the other day, and the lighting was supposed to be this November. They moved it to March of next year. So the earliest time it would be resurfaced is possibly May of next year. But again, with the thing, funding's available.
Well, that's a big road that goes through the center of town.
It would be going from
the other door.
159 to Route 30.
I just kind of wanted to put that out there.
I was talking to the gentleman I was trying to.
So hopefully slated that it will be.
Okay.
Question on the cameras. Those are street cameras you're talking about, correct? Or is it Are those parking lot cameras?
Yeah, those are the additional intersections and areas in the town as part of our safety plan. We're increasing license plate recognition cameras, things like that.
Any other questions regarding this information that the manager went over before we jump into the other end of the packet?
I have something outside of that if once everyone's done.
I just, maybe you and I could talk later about the A through F. I had a little bit of difficulty following kind of the prioritization on it, so.
Well, yeah, we're.
No,
yeah,
I could
we're not
kind
done
of
yet.
see it, I'm having a hard time visualizing how it translates to particular projects, and I can see the numbers, but I can't put them together, so maybe we can talk later on it.
Okay. So really, the next part is where we really are going to need your feedback on. So we sat down a few weeks ago and spent a good part of a morning kind of developing, and again, these aren't all our goals because our whole goals could be a couple hundred, but we wanted to focus on ones that were larger goals and then some things that the board had identified as priorities in previous years. So this is really, I will say, is an initial list. And so what I'll be asking the board to do is, you know, over your weekend, maybe between your turkey and the Bears thrashing the Vikings, just set some time up and the Lions.
Thrash the Vikings.
Did I say the Vikings? Yeah.
We did that too.
I know, I know.
It's on there.
See, I like other bears too, the big bears besides the little ones. Anyway, I digress. So, yeah, so, and again, what I'd like to do is kind of a simple 1, 2, 3 priority, with 1 being the most important, 3 being the least, and with a understanding that not everything can be a 1, right? That's, because the reality is we don't have the ability to fund everything here. But let me just kind of go through these, and again, some of these are things we've talked about, some of these are new, and so I'll maybe spend a little time on those. Public Works, we identified, again, several large projects here, obviously the downtown. Public improvements we've talked about as part of our economic incentive projects. The LED program, for those of you who aren't aware, we've been doing this selectively throughout town, and John Urbanski kind of came up with this number. We'd be happy to kind of go through the details of where these lights are, what we're thinking about, but this is something we'd like to expand. MWRD is, and Kevin be happy to talk about their requirement. The private lateral service is something that we're going to have to address at some point in the future. Water sanitary infrastructure upgrades, we're estimating about $6 million in next year's budget. Some of these are not really dollars in the budget, but we wanted to put them down as a priority. And obviously, with all these spending priorities, we wanted to see where we can get revenue from. So we know there's monies out there for bike paths, the LED, Will County, and there is murmurs of a capital bill we've been talking with our lobbyists about, and so the staff has kind of developed a comprehensive list of some of the projects that hopefully can be funded. So that's just, again, I know this is very big, but just some of the big public works things. Is there any, I'll just stop at each department. Is there any?
So 2 questions on that. So the LED program, and that's something you're hoping to get some leverage from dollars from the state to use ours.
And John, you want to talk about just shortly where you think maybe some of the priorities would be?
Yes, sir. So as you're aware, over the last 2 years, we've instituted replacement of our existing street lighting with the LED street lighting. The lights currently give us a 3-to-1 ratio for consumption of energy. Quick math, we spend approximately $300,000 a year in energy costs for our street lighting. By the time we get to completion of this project, and we have just under 4,000 lights in town, we'd look at a, again, with the 3-to-1 ratio, dropping that $300,000 a year in energy costs to $100,000 a year. Again, as we look at right now, we're spending about $350 a year for installation. We get about just under one fixture per $1,000. That's purchase of the fixture, installation of the new Smart Cities technology into that, which includes instant notification of outages or knockdowns. Plus, it also gives us actual consumption versus right now where we have some of these without meters that are guesstimated consumption. So gives us that technology, and again, we're doing approximately $150 a year. We are applying for energy grants each year. We were utilizing the DECO grants, which were giving us a better kilowatt per consumption savings, but with that program now being closed, we utilize the ComEd energy grant, where right now per 350, we're getting, I believe our most recent grant was in the range of $60,000 returned to us with that grant. So we reutilized that funding and installed, I think it was the last board meeting we requested your approval to install additional lights to that scope. So again, that's what we're looking at in the future here is as we continue to sweep across the town and upgrading these lights to the LEDs, we're starting to, after the first year, obviously see some energy consumption savings, but the big numbers won't be seen until after, we get the full sweep of the town.
And are you estimating 8 years to go through the
at the rate of project scope of $350,000 a year? Again, we've got about 4,000 lights in town, and we're doing $350,000 a year. So that's we're doing about 350 lights a year. So we're applying, guesstimating that we have about 8 years left at that rate.
Would the grants vary? I mean, obviously the last grant was one type. I mean, do they vary?
My understanding is that they do vary annually based on what what is being afforded by ComEd. Again, we saw a large decrease in returns on that because of the DCO grant closing, where we were getting almost twice as much previously. But this is the first year on the new ComEd grant that we are seeing with that. And like I said, it was almost in half from what we got last year.
Keep us posted if the formula changes. We might want to make that a higher priority depending on how much leverage we get on that.
Yes, sir.
It's obviously going to save money.
Any opportunity? I'm sorry, I didn't mean I thought you finished.
No, I finished.
Good?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Any opportunity to apply for the capital bill that they're putting together for this project? Or has that been addressed? Now you guys got it together?
Yeah, I mean,
Put it on the list.
It was included?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it'll be on the list.
It's on the list.
Okay.
And are you replacing the fixture only or pole and fixture?
Just a fixture. We do have a few poles in town that we're getting replaced based on a need basis, but for the most part, the poles, are in good shape.
Does that need rewiring?
Again, as needed basis. We did put it in a scope. If we needed fuses to be replaced, handhold covers, wiring, anything, as they came across it during the installation, we tried to bring it to code.
So it's not easy just to unscrew a bulb and put a new one in?
No, sir. Not anymore.
Hey, John, I had a question. On the public safety end of it, we mentioned about hiring the police officers. In your budget, are you going to have hiring additional staff?
Every year we do request additional staff in our budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
So public safety, even though the list is short, these are obviously very big and important items. So we've talked about the fire station. The hiring of the police officers, that is obviously something we would appreciate direction on. I think, as we all know, the study, we've hired 5 this year. This additional 5, they would add a total of 10 officers. This is, I think, fair to say, ambitious within our revenue sources, but. We'd be certainly welcome to hear feedback whether the board thinks that's an appropriate target or it should be a different target. Again, that would be, it's about an $800,000 cost. Some of that will go away after the first year because it's of the vehicle cost, but this is, of course, an annual cost. So And then we are looking at an additional 6 camera locations, and those would be about $150,000 a site. So, again, this is one of those that, do we have to do 6 cameras? Do we have to hire 5 officers? You know, that's where we need your direction. Is there a different number or a different target that you'd like to see?
As far as the officers, Dave, do we, or the cars, do we have any other vehicles sitting around that we have to get 5 more? We don't have any vehicles or pool
In terms
cars?
of squad
or
cars? Yeah. I mean,
That'd be it. I know Chief Walsh or First Solid Canoe.
The last hire used the last of the squad cars.
So we're all out.
They take
And not all of them, because some don't live in town anymore. So the pool cars, there's absolutely nothing out there. We would have to get 5 additional cars. Okay. I would suggest, I think, I don't know where the whole budget's gonna end up, Chief, on your end, see if there's somewhere that you can move funds and actually hire more officers. I'd be comfortable in the 7, 8 range, if we could find somewhere where you could shift something from your budget.
How many can we capacity actually, if we were to hire, but we have to get through we have to get through the academy? There's a number, is there not? I mean, we can only get a certain amount in the academy annually.
When I spoke to the command staff, we can only properly train 3 at a time at maximum, because with this amount of field training officers we have to get them. So I would love to get 5 in at once, but we would realistically only train 3. Right now, because we had a couple people wash out, we have 1 that'll qualify for the academy, 1 that's already been through the academy, so we'll only have 1 in January, but we'll have 2 officers available.
Just, let's bounce back to, I guess, the original question. So if we can only physically train 3 at a time because of our limits in field training, correct?
But there's 3 academies a year.
Okay, so then you could do that 9 times then?
Well, we could do 9.
How long is the field training again?
9 officers, I'm sorry.
How long is the field training?
Field training, the academy is 10 to 12 weeks, and then field training is another 3 months about.
6 months. So you could do 6.
So we could do 6 a year. Stanley Park can't. I mean, because we have the capacity of doing 3 officers, right?
Well,
every
3 in each
academy session.
There's 1 in January, there's 1 in April or May, and then there's 1 at the end of the year for every fiscal year that they have. So for us, from May to May, we could train 9 officers total. Am I answering that correctly?
Well, I guess I'm confused on, because it just explained that it takes 6 months to train 1, I don't know why they consider probationary officers, 1 probationary officer to 1 police officer in Tinley Park, right? I mean, that requires, so we can only do 3 of those, because we only have 3 that are capable of doing that?
We have, how many training officers do we have?
We have approximately 18 FTOs.
About 18 FTOs, but because you have 3 in, they have a primary and a secondary. So when I was talking to Sergeant Persha, he said that realistically we can only train 3 per each academy, because they got to go through that FTO period. So then,
which is 6 months at a time,
Yes, sir.
right? So that means that we can only do 6 a year. Because if it's 6 months, and that's 12 months, right?
well, yeah, we could.
We could
train-
send 9 to an academy, but we can only train 6 of them.
Within the fiscal year. that's
Within
all.
the
Yeah,
fiscal year. I
6.
mean, we're talking budgetarily here, guys. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to figure out.
6 is fair.
I don't want to say that we're going to go ahead and put 9 into budget, but then, I mean, this is not a smoke and mirror thing. This is politics. This is actually legitimate here. I want to know what.
We could train up to 9, but 6 is fair.
Okay, so that helps that.
And I just, you know, we can pick a target. I just would caution trying to say that we can offset, because police is really it's a personnel-driven budget. And so I'm not sure it would really be possible to, I think, offset. If you're talking about any 2 people, that would be offsetting.
Sure you could. There's a
Well,
lot of stuff, there's a lot of stuff
well, I
in the
mean,
budget, Dave, that are more of a want than or something that's a need than, or a want than a need.
Well,
Happens all the time. There's stuff that you want and there's stuff that you
well, I know,
actually
but
need.
when you're
If we
talking,
wanted to hire him, we could. It's 2.5 months for the academy. And then, once they're done with the academy, those officers go with the FTOs. And then another academy starts up. There's 3, and then you said there's 3 of them in a year. The math is 9.
I understand. It's just, all I'm saying is that if you want to set it as a target higher, I don't think we should look at it as we're going to offset 400,000 or whatever the number is inside the police budget. Or maybe you weren't suggesting it. Maybe you were suggesting somewhere else in the budget.
That's what I was asking Chief Faracelli about the vehicles, what we have left.
But those are one-time costs anyway, for the most part. I mean,
Looking for this year, 20 years.
I know, but you
putting
got to fund salaries every year.
So if you didn't have to.
Okay.
I get it.
But Dave, just so that I'm clear, you're asking us to look at how to allocate our public safety resources between cameras and personnel, and I guess that's something we...
Again, as a goal, obviously, we don't know till we get in the
about
budget what we can afford, but, what's a target? We may be able to reach that target, we may not.
And not only that, how many are going to be retiring? Or maybe we should do a 9 to catch. I don't know where they're at.
That's actually my next question. I think that's right on point. Like, so this past year, I mean, this has been a 1.5 year long discussion, right? I mean, we're saying that we hired police officers this year. I know we have. We've had them here, right? But that was replacing those that have already retired. So has this village added any new employee for the police department outside of replacements? I don't know, maybe Charles, do you want to dive into that?
Okay.
Yeah, you were the acting police chief during this time. So.
Truthfully, we've just now, this last class, we will be those 3 officers that we're putting on January are the 3 that we were approved for this year. We just now caught up. The ones that they're not through training, they're not on the street yet, but when we hire them, that day they add to our numbers. They're part of the numbers of our people. So we have several people who are in field training, but the 3 that we're supposed to be getting in January that we're hoping to put into class, which, once again, like the chief said, we're having some washouts and having some problems. But if we got those 3, those would be the 3 that we requested for the budget year.
But within the 1 to 3 and the 3 to 5 year range, do we have an estimate on how many people will be retiring? Because that could change the yearly number, whether you do the 6 or the 9.
And I don't want to step on your toes, Chief, but we calculated this out a couple. I think Darren and I, when we talked about, there are 9 people who could leave right now. You don't know. No one's talked about it. It usually isn't talked about. But officers can leave at the age of 50 and with 20 years on the job. And when we calculated that, I think we came up with 9 who have those capabilities right now. So there's no way for us to know. And that's like you said, I do understand what you're saying. Trying to keep ahead of that number is always a problem because you don't know who's going to retire from year to year and where that number is going to be. So
when 4 or 5 people walk out, and then now we're waiting 6 months to replace them.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if we felt that we were at a point where X was going to retire, then we should be trying to hit the maximum of 9. If we don't, then maybe we can stay at the 6 range. It's just
and that's a given. I mean, if we have 4 people retire, we'll need to add 4 to whatever number is here. I mean, I think the basic question is, in terms of our authorized staffing levels, clearly the staffing study said you need to increase your authorized staffing levels. How much do we want to try to do this year?
This is expansion of staff.
Yes.
Whereas if an officer leaves,
we will
replace him.
Yeah.
We don't.
This exceeds the amount that we've already currently used.
Yeah.
I guess this is probably a good segue to dive into putting the chief on the spot here. The staffing study, you weren't around for that. You've read about that. You've discussed it with your administration, your staff. Are you comfortable with how we're implementing this moving forward?
We just started to implement it. I was looking at some of the numbers, and we're basically just replenishing those that we were down right now, and we're just starting to add to our numbers. I would like to add as many as the budget can absorb, obviously, but that's something that has to be determined by the board. If we get 5 or 6, it adds to our number. When I had done my presentation, I had a 3-year plan of implementation because I knew that we could only do it as the budget could absorb the costs.
And this may segue back to what Trustee Glatz was saying, is that when we do get into the budget, we start looking at what the wants, the needs are of the police department. Are you guys going to be able to prioritize the actual needs to the personnel? So, like, for example, can you say to yourselves and to this board, we need staff over this year? I know, because we're going to be brought a personnel request and then a capital request, right? I mean, that's how this usually is done. Are you going to be able to prioritize that by saying we need this over that?
Yeah, we could do that.
Understand, because none of us are police officers,
right.
And we read a report, and yes, it says we need police officers. Is that what the police department in Tinley Park is saying that we need?
Yes, definitely. We need people. Absolutely.
Because I think we need to. I mean, we could sit here and talk about 5 police officers, 6 police officers, 9, 13, whatever, all night long. But back to your point, I think this has a lot to do with what the budget will absorb, just like you said. More importantly, prioritizing and figuring out if there's ways that we could take away some of those needs to see if we could cover some of the expenses that it takes to add additional officers, like the one-time fees of a police car. I think that's kind of where you're going with that. Am I correct? Okay.
And just for clarification, when you hire new recruits, it's approximately, they're on the payroll from the moment you hire them. They don't go on the street for about 6 months.
They go on the street after the academy, but they're with a field training officer for about 3 months.
Okay. Before they on their own.
So I think in here it's to try to do more by seeing if we can reduce other parts of the police budget, I think is what I'm hearing, so.
Yeah, I mean, because I understand your point. I mean, there's fixed cost to this, and
Yeah.
there's a personnel cost.
Yeah.
We all understand that.
Yeah.
But I think back to what Trustee Glatz was saying, and certainly what I'm kind of thinking as well, is there might be a way to look at some of those needs that you guys are asking for in the police department, apply those to the fixed costs of the additional police cruisers or whatever. Darren, you had something you wanted to add?
Not every single new person that we bring on has to go to the academy. Sometimes there's officers who already are certified that we can just jump right into the FTO program and get them started training. So not everybody has to go through the academy to start to understand.
I thought with civil service, even if they were coming from another department, they'd have to get trained up again through our department.
No, sir. As long as they're state certified by the state of Illinois, they can come right on the police department and start the FTO program right away.
Only in the field.
Only Tinley Park's FTO.
Okay, got it.
Chief, when you say something's a wash, what does that mean? How many don't actually finish?
I don't have an actual number, but I know that recently, since I've been here, we've had probably 3 or 4 that did not pass the background. So we have to go back to civil service to ask permission to get more names for them to do more backgrounds. So the backgrounds are very comprehensive, and our investigators, it takes them a lot of time to do. And that's where the holdup is, because we had a few just recently wash out. So now we don't have the numbers I'd like to have in the academy, but I have to get more names, and it won't be ready by January.
How's that list going? We had an auditorium full of people last year.
Pardon?
How is that list? We had an auditorium full of people that were interested in the job last year, and they kind of narrowed it down. How deep is that list now with the washouts and the rest?
We're almost halfway through.
Okay.
We're almost halfway through.
So we could still work out that list for a while. Thanks. Any other questions on this? It sounds like there's going to need to be some further thoughts on this.
How many are on that list, Denise?
It's about 60 or 70.
80? Thanks, Hannah.
And it's from October 2017, so it's it has to last 2 years. So.
At least 2 years in a day.
All right.
Okay. I could talk, and this is pretty normal in a lot of communities. A lot of the big projects are community development type projects, and this is good because it means we have a lot going on. I'm just going to hit on ones that we maybe, oh, thank you, haven't talked about that much. One of the things the village used to have, I'm looking at the third item, was what's called a community development block program. It's basically a federal program that can provide money in areas that qualify, and that's a key thing in terms of income for anything from public improvements to private rehabilitation of residents. So we're gonna look at restarting that this year and seeing what areas might qualify. It is a labor-intensive program. That's one of the downsides, but again, in this idea of trying to look for grant money where we can, we want to look at that. The comprehensive land use plan is something that's been kind of on our radar for a while. And again, that's usually done with the help of an outside person. So there's money developed, money in the tentative budget for that. We do think with obviously the good news with all this development downtown, we want to make sure we kind of have an updated traffic and parking study, make sure as all these new developments come online, the plaza comes online, that we're looking at parking and traffic appropriately. We've kind of put just a general number aside for a potential land acquisition. I think as the board knows, there's opportunities that sometimes come up that can help the village in the development area and public infrastructure area. Some of the other ones in the next page are things that we've talked about. Yeah, falling asleep there, thank you. No. Basically, a lot of our focus is on the 191st Street corridor now, the Lincoln Way site, Panduit headquarters. We've had some interest in the old Kmart, and obviously that's going to be another area of focus. We've had some interest, some general interest in the Panduit TIF development, and hope to see that further solidified next year. One of the goals that the board had certainly established for me last year was to look at improving the permit process in terms of customer service and permit turnaround. As we talked about, our new software will help with that. We're also looking at some additional customer service. We've got, as you all know, a new comment card system that just started, which will give us some feedback on how to improve that area. Playbook we've talked about, North Streets, securing a major development in Rich Township again. These are all goals that are kind of carryovers from the strategic plan, but all important. Marketing, I'm sorry, is there anything on community development? There's a lot there, and I just kind of rolled through that, but it's a lot of stuff we've talked about. Marketing, the wayfinding signage, again, that's a project that we're in the middle of, and that's our estimated cost. One of the recommendations in the Roger Brooks study, this is something Don and I have been doing some research on, is whether our current CVB is the best arrangement for us, or whether or not a renegotiation of agreement with the CVB or perhaps an independent entity would serve us better. I think, as everyone knows, we contribute, I think it's over $250,000 a year towards that. We're as the largest hotel group, and so we just want to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck, especially as we really start to become more of a tourism focused community with the development of the plaza and hopefully the increased usage of the convention center. We've got money. We'll have identified money for the branding initiatives. Obviously, the plaza construction. And again, just to emphasize, this is the plaza itself. The infrastructure is in addition to that, so we'll have some further discussion of that. Last item, a minor budget item, but I just wanted to I think it's important to everything else, is that 3 years ago, we started a process where we committed to doing a regular citizen survey. And so after the first of the year, we're going to be asking the board to consider starting that again. It'll take us a few months to develop it. And, you know, those results will obviously help guide some of our future planning needs. So anything in marketing?
You've been busy this year. Thanks, Donna.
Yes. Very busy. The clerk's office. Okay, so this is one we had briefly discussed last year, but I think haven't had a really thorough discussion on it. And I think at this point, I'd be looking for tonight really more the idea, do we want to look at kind of developing a kind of a pros and cons, and the clerk's office done a really good job at kind of an initial financial analysis. A lot of communities are going towards outsourcing or eliminating vehicle stickers. The clerk has talked about that. The mayor's talked about this. And so that's something, there's pros and cons to it. It is a staff-intensive process, but it is a revenue source that we use to fund a lot of our needs. And so if we don't have that, we would certainly recommend replacing that, and there are other options. So the question really tonight, without getting into a full-fledged debate, is whether you'd like us to kind of come back with a paper in terms of some of our options, both in terms of if we eliminate it, what the alternatives are, or the option of keeping it but outsourcing it to a private company.
Could I mention some of the points that we found in our research? So all board members got a copy of the memo in the backup. So the number of stickers sold has declined over the past 8 years by about 3,700. Revenue from sticker sales has declined just over 110,000, about 114,268 by my calculations. Since 2013, the amount of senior stickers sold has gone up an average of 200 stickers each year. And those senior stickers are $1.50 each. So the cost difference of a senior sticker versus a regular passenger sticker is $23.50. So over the summer, we did a review of comparable communities. And we paid particular attention to, does the community sell stickers? If so, what is the price? And has the community's vehicle sticker program been replaced with another source of revenue? And many have. Oak Lawn most recently. And most notably, last Friday, it was reported in the news, the Daily Herald, that Palatine is considering dumping their vehicle stickers. And essentially for the same reasons that I'm concerned with. It's not only the decreasing revenue, which has gone down from, if you look on page 3, in 2011, the revenue was about $697, so it's $698,000 a year, down to 2018, $583,683. And participation has decreased dramatically. There has been minimal enforcement, and I don't think it's fair to ask the police to ramp that up given their current staffing levels. So essentially what we're looking for is a more equitable alternative. And many of these communities, it's a little hard to read in some of the copies from the spreadsheets, but many of the communities have replaced, have gotten an alternate source of revenue from utility bills. Palatine most recently is adding a $330 to $465 charge on monthly utility bills. So, and what's interesting is Palatine's population is about 11,000 more than ours, but their budget is currently twice what ours was back in 2011. So 1.2 million, and they're considering replacing it versus our revenue stream. So it's not only the decreasing revenues, but a more equitable alternative for village residents, because essentially the system is operating on the honor system, basically. So.
possibly you could explain what the revenues are applied to within the village?
The vehicle sticker revenue is entirely dedicated towards our ongoing pavement management program for supporting our reconstruction of our streets.
I did read the thing, and I've thought for some time and I don't think all the costs that are really involved are getting calculated here.
It's really hard to quantify the staff costs.
That are at that window, to collect the money, write the check, process the check. I mean, I almost wonder if it's not costing us as much to run this program as we're taking in. And I just can't see, ramping up enforcement on our citizens for village stickers. So to me, I'm thinking, what is the purpose of the village sticker? What are we using it for other than just as a revenue source? I mean, is there any other real purpose behind it? I mean, to identify vehicles as belonging in town? I mean, you kind of know now with all these computers that this vehicle belongs on this street. I'd be interested in reviewing it. I don't see ramping up enforcement on our citizens. I don't see it as a big revenue source, So I'd be interested in looking into it.
I'm definitely interested in getting rid of them. How many stickers are 5,800, and then you've got printing? Do you have to pay for the plastic part, decal, and then print on there? Is this like a...
sticker, right?
Yeah, I was confused on that. Also, under 55 years old, how many of those are purchased? Do we have any idea?
I purchased one of my wife. It's 2.
You're so legal.
But it's a pain in the neck, too. I mean,
it is. It's so hard on the
staff. Every year you got to stand in line at the police station.
You're under 55?
Not anymore. As of October, I'm not. Thanks for noticing.
You said the Palatine added to their utility tax?
Yes.
So they just added
They added
an additional
additional tax on their utility bills, which is roughly $3 to $4 per month per resident.
And on what utilities? So it would really just be water, right? Is that
electric utility?
Electric bills. But
typically, you
water,
apply the utility taxes to electric and gas and telephone.
So I guess now we're looking just, though, to see if there's interest in it, and you'll present.
Yeah, and we could come back with alternative revenues. We could say to match the stickers, you would need to do X%, or maybe
I
there might
think
be
it's
some
easier
other
to
option.
do something per household because a lot of households are doing it anyways.
right.
It sounds like the majority of them aren't.
So exactly, so it would make it easy.
It'd be more fair, and it would
It'd be
eliminate
easier
the
to
need for
calculate. It'd be
enforcement.
easier to calculate too. The revenue for Brad.
I'm not sure. What do you?
If you
what are
do it per
suggesting?
household instead
what
of
per
doing it
household?
per car, because a lot of people aren't getting the stickers.
Well, I
You're
think,
saying a charge per household.
but you'd be interested in evaluating something.
Absolutely.
Is there anybody who's not interested in seeing if there's other options?
Oh, no, I think we should.
Of course we should. Maybe free for seniors.
Yeah, I have four stickers. I'd rather just pay them.
Yeah, well, why should they come in here and do all that?
Stickers.
Right, and I went into this thinking, if we did go the utility bill option, the cost per year would be equivalent to the purchase of a vehicle sticker. So households wouldn't be paying more.
Is there all a concern about the actual staffing levels of the clerk's office then? Because if this were to be eliminated, I could see that there would be a need to not have as many positions within the clerk's office then?
Or
Is it more
Right,
specifically
well,
because
we've been
of the
discussing
further on in the
recently.
conversation tonight, we're talking
Yeah,
about?
I mean, I think the two discussions
admin
are
study?
related. Yeah, I mean, I think we would not want to finalize the second one till I think a decision was made here. But yeah, we've had discussions. Part of the staffing study was whether some of the things that are in the clerk's office are more appropriate for finance. We've been having those discussions, but I think we really need to make this decision on the stickers, because that would affect certainly how we staff things. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate we can't narrow this number down for the approximate cost that this program costs the village. I wish we could have it better.
You mean in terms of staffing? costs?
Yeah, the staffing element of it. I mean, we could certainly apply hours or time dedicated to it, but it doesn't include the pension benefits and all the rest that's going
Right.
associated with it, which is unfortunate.
We can.
Maybe
I
you
seem
get
to remember
those
there being
reports.
something like 2015, Pat Ray had presented this whole PowerPoint situation.
Yeah,
I don't recall
and we've done
exact
some
details, but
we've done some calculations on what it costs to process the stickers, and part of that is to say that, you know, for every senior sticker that we sell at $1.50, we are losing a huge amount of money. That right now is probably one of the biggest problems with the whole program, is that the senior stickers are subsidized by everyone else.
I think that's wonderful as a senior.
I do too.
What is it, 56?
I'm not a senior, but they deserve a break around here.
Right, but they're being subsidized by those who pay in voluntarily. So.
Yeah, but we could tweak the number.
I think we'd all be interested in seeing. what
Yeah,
other-
okay.
Yeah, let's check it out.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll bring something back to finance.
Sure.
Okay, so we're almost to the end here. So, manager's office, a lot of these things, again, are these are not big ticket budget items, but they're just to put on your radar. Next year, obviously, the garbage RFP is going to be one of the major things that Pat's working on. Employee training was one of the ones the board has kind of asked us to look at. We're looking at additional training this year. Now that we've finished our new pay plan, we're in the process of implementing a new performance evaluation system. One of the things Denise has done some research on with some other staff members, IT, is we're going to be asking for some software that they think will continue to make our hiring process more efficient and turn around the whole process quicker. We're going to be, now that Michael's on board, there's a lot of things he's implementing. We want to develop that into a long-term IT plan. The last thing, you know, and this is can be a little bit difficult discussion to have, but one of the things that I've asked the staff to look at is we do have, you know, a lot of our fees that have kind of kept at a static level for a number of years, and to look at where we are in terms of fees from, you know, the community development to fire and others, to see where we're at to the market, and that will be something that will be presented to the committee for their review in the future also. So, because there are a number of areas, and Paul has talked about this before. Again, I'm forgetting to switch here. So, that are basically below the market. So, finance, with a lot of personnel change this year, but one of the things, of course, we'll be working on is implementing the results from the fraud assessment study. So anything in the managers and finance area? Nope. So, again, what I'd ask the board to do, and I think Lisa, we put some loose leaf sheets on them, on the dais for them to take home and rank. So if you could get that back to us Tuesday, but are there additional large things that we think should be on there or should be considering that we didn't think of here? Anything that you can think of?
Dave, to clarify, you want us to rank in each section, you want us to rank 1 through 5 numerically?
I'm asking
can we
basically
rank more things. 2 things could be number 1 priority.
Yeah, what I'm suggesting to keep it simple is that the things that are most important should be 1, moderately important is 2, and least important is 3. So, and again,
But in each category or the sheet as a whole?
For the whole sheet,
Okay.
yeah.
That's this blue and white sheet?
Yep.
Okay, so not by each category?
No, just Tim. And again, without setting too many rules here to try to balance the 1, 2s, and 3s so they're somewhat equal. And And if you could just drop those off or email those back by a week from today, that'd be great.
Dave, I have a question just
Sure.
in general. As far as the, for the budget coming up for conferences that the
Yeah.
staffing goes to, I don't ever remember, I don't know if that's something that you guys do. Do they write, are there reports written on, you know, maybe what they learned or what we could possibly implement within the village? Or-
It's some departments have, and we haven't always applied it consistently. I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if
Okay.
we're going to be going to conferences and stuff, especially out of state, maybe in state, make it, you know, if we're going 2 or 3 days, I think there should be some type of report. And we make sure
Okay.
that, you know, that conference is worth going to.
Yeah, a report on what they learned and what can be implemented. And yeah, I mean that's a best practice that I've done in other towns, and we can work on implementing that for. Well, I would say you probably want to do multi-day conferences. So yeah,
Whatever you think is best.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
It's actually part of our travel and conference policy.
I'm just saying, no, us as a board, when you guys go away or do whatever you do, we don't ever see anything on it. We don't know what you're going to. I mean, typewriter maintenance, you know, I mean, how is it helping the village on what you're doing?
So Dave, I see that your budget's scheduled the next meeting's.
Yeah,
February.
let's go to
I'm guessing
budget.
you're probably going to want to do something before that, especially on public safety and goals.
Yes. Yeah, the budget schedule. So basically, the plan is to have a draft budget to the board February 18th. But I think what your question is on some of the bigger issues that were raised tonight, like I think what I'm taking away from tonight is I think maybe before that budget, we need to have some more discussion on the police officers, the vehicle stickers, and I think even maybe a presentation on the fees. I think would probably be helpful because that's going to shape the budget. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
appreciate your bringing this to everybody early on,
Yeah.
especially since we've got a couple newer folks here, because it's nice to be involved in the process at the early stages and kind of visualize, you know, what dollars there are, where they're going, and what our priorities are. And it's nice that the board is involved and that you're seeking our input like this.
As they should be, and it makes it
Yeah.
easier for everyone. So we will, we will set up committee meetings for police staffing, the sticker issue, as well as the fee issue, and we'll do that, I think as soon as possible. It may have to wait till after the holidays, but if, you know, maybe early January or something, so we can, because that will help us shape the budget. So we'll do that. And then I did put in the packet kind of our draft budget schedule. So the plan is to send it to you on the 18th. And so here's, I think there's everybody has a calendar on their desk, and hopefully everybody had a chance to look at their schedules beforehand. I will tell you what I'm thinking, because I know Tuesdays is always easiest because people have blocked off. And so what I was thinking was that on February 26th, that's typically a committee meeting. We could use that as our main budget night, and then if we need kind of a follow-up night, 2 weeks later would be March 12th, again, a committee night, where that might just be questions that we can't answer or follow-up questions. So, but I just want to find out tonight, is there people know that are going to be around, or I think these are important meetings, so I'd like to have as many, if not all, the board here at those meetings. So does that make sense?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Anything further?
Lisa is in the background cheering because she's.
Does anyone have any board members have any further comment on the budget tonight? Anybody staff have any?
Those times that we didn't know about, or?
I actually, one
Not yet.
topic I did not cover.
No
And then
plans.
I'll be done talking.
Oh, okay, I thought you were.
There's a sheet on mid-year requests. It was actually right before this schedule. God, I'm forgetting this is here for some reason. So the mid-year request, again, this is one where the money's approved in the budget. The expenditures are tentatively approved, but we do this just to make sure we're still comfortable with the decision at mid-year, that budget's doing well enough. So there's a few items in here. There's explanatory memos in your packet for all of them. Pickup truck, the accountant, the telecommunicator, and the custodian were all positions that we've discussed. The accountant, I would definitely recommend filling that position in some form. One, I think as everyone knows, we had a recent retirement. We're filling that position. I think there might be an expectation with the, I'm trying not to use the word the age of the department, but I'm going to say it, the age of some of the folks in the department, that the next couple of years there could be additional retirement. So we really need to plan for succession. Yes.
Succession planning.
Succession planning. Yes. I know. I know. Yeah. I know. Yes. Yeah. The night's getting. Probably should have stopped where.
No offense, ladies.
Yeah. No, yes. Yeah. One of the things we'd like to look at with the accountant position is it best to fill it with a staff position, or potentially look at whether there could be a private sector assistance. We're looking at that right now, but I'd like to get your okay to at least move forward with that review. Telecommunicator, Pat, you want to just explain in 30 seconds or so? Or maybe not. Okay.
No,
okay.
we need more telecommunicators. So
okay.
That's it. Boom.
That's the short.
Yeah. The custodian position, this was something we had discussed in budget, and we really don't have, there's not really a supervisor position, so we're looking at this as kind of a working supervisor position. Would work in the police department, provide better coordination. I think just upping, the level of what we get right now. So that's basically what we would recommend. So any questions on that, or any concerns about any of those recommendations?
Full-time custodian for $18,000.
It's a half. Yeah, we should. These are half-year costs.
You're looking at hiring them for the remainder of this current fiscal year.
Well, yeah, and obviously that would carry over to future years. So yeah. And I should have.
We're looking at half the cost right now.
Half the cost. Yeah, we should have clarified it here. These are, to be honest, these are really half the cost, because it's for 6 months. So it's a good catch.
So you don't want the pickup truck?
We do want it. Not just a half truck.
It's not the half.
Yeah. Right. Should have
on wheel, half car.
Yeah.
We can get the tires this year.
Okay.
Who's requesting the truck? Where is that?
Public Works.
Public Works.
It's got 6.
What are you going into next?
Hey, so just thank you again for the great input. Thanks to the department heads, because this year really, we've already put a lot of energy into the capital budget as well as this. So I think it's really required everybody to start thinking ahead earlier, and so it couldn't have been done without everybody's support. So thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
Didn't we do public comment?
There's no comments from the public.
Oh.
Let's just put one in there.
It's a good.
Motion to advance the comments.
Oh.
Yeah, we should move
I don't have
public
it on
comment
mine,
up,
but
yeah.
comments from the public. Does
Yeah.
anybody from the public wish to address the board?
Hey, Dave, Mr. Niemeyer. The most recent, what is it, what I want to say is, the Tinley Park Mental Health Center. There, when you said the approximate, the value of the appraisal is what I'm trying to say. Is that still 3 years or 4 years ago, or did we just get a recent one?
No, that's just based on what we got 3 years ago. Until we get an updated one from the state, we're just basing on what we got for years ago.
Thanks. And the squad cars that are all issued, are all these police officers, they live in Tinley or within a 30-mile range, or?
Well, now with our new policy, you only get a car if you live in town.
Okay.
The take-home car, yes.
Okay. And a question, this is, as far as village codes, if you own a business, and let's just say I'm going to buy it for my brother or somebody like that, and there's numerous village code violations, am I reading it right? You get 60 months to correct the code violations?
I'm sorry.
How many months, how long do you get to correct any code violations if you buy a business or if the business is transferred?
It depends on the violation. I'm not sure.
Fire suppression?
Oh, that's the alarm. Do you want to explain that? The alarms, 60 months, yeah. That's been our policy for, yeah. Yeah, that's our standard policy for the alarm, just for the alarm. And the sprinkler system? Okay. Okay.
So, hypothetically, if I own a business, just say a burrito stand, I had a fire in there and something happened, would I be liable or would the village be liable because I wasn't up to date?
I'm not going to get into a legal question, but it's basically a policy in place. We recognize that it's a significant cost, and that's the reason for the 5-year period. I mean,
it seems it seems quite extensive if it's something that's pertaining to safety issue.
I don't know that that's unusual, but but I think it's recognizing that it's a
okay. As far as like
cost and
Dave, when you were in was it Naperville or whatever? Is that how their surrounding communities go, or? It's just a question.
It varies. It's not unusual to give businesses time for a very expensive upgrade like that. I wouldn't, again, want to speculate on the spot whether 5 years is the average, but it's not unusual to.
Okay, and well, Councilor Conley isn't here, but the village wouldn't. Nobody could say if the village would be liable for issuing a occupancy license if they're really not up to code.
Basically it's an occupancy permit that has nothing to do with. If you get an extension on an improvement, that has nothing to do with the liability.
I didn't say improvement. I said a transfer to a sale. You know, if I was selling a business to somebody.
Yeah. We'll get back to you on the legality issue.
All right, thanks.
So, thanks.
Does anyone else from the public wish to address the board? Let the record reflect there is no one. Do I have a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more class of employees?
So moved.
Second.
We need a roll call on that, correct? Yes. Roll call, please.
Trustee Panito.
Yes.
Trustee Brady.
Yes.
Trustee Glotz.
Yes.
Trustee Curran.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes, you were
Unity.
left off. Thank you.
Nice job. Nice job. Yeah.
Thanks all. Good job.
I'll have to apologize to staff for calling them.